Well, hi, it's Carrie Smith here, and I'm at the Thomas Reynolds Gallery in Santa Barbara on State Street, and we're here to celebrate the Western Edge. Now, the Western Edge is a group of 13 artists who have exhibited together in many different ways over the last decade. Some have known each other a lot longer, and we decided to form a group of 13. And this is our inaugural show. It's called Broad Spectrum, and we have Dorothy Churchill Johnson, Cynthia Martin, Cynthia James, Veronica Walmsley, R.T. Livingston. We have Marlene Strauss. We have Pamela Entenkamp, Joan Rosenberg Dent, Nancy Gifford, I think I've mentioned everyone, and myself, Carrie Smith. And this show will be here for the next 6 weeks, and then the intention is for it to go to other galleries, other museums. So this is for us a 2-3 year commitment. The shows will change, and so will the venues.
Can you tell me about one of your pieces here?
Sure, I'd love to.
Okay.
So, this is a piece called Flora Ficioni.
It's called what?
Flora Ficioni, and it's a series of paintings, and this one is called Gigantha Glorietta. Now, I make up the names, and I'm celebrating plants in nature. I'm celebrating patterns in nature. So you will look at a plant and you might think it's a cactus, but is it? There's something fantastical about nature, and I'm revisiting it and expressing it in my way.
Can you tell me if there's anything you have to say about the color, shape, line, or any other design? Move this way. Yeah.
So I'm very much into color. I love vibrancy of color, and I love whimsical and lots of curves and undulating shapes, and they're quite feminine. I think of my work as quite feminine and quite sensual.
I would say so. Anything else? Let's see. What would you say makes art as opposed to a scribble or found art?
Well, I think it's all in the eye of the beholder. I don't think there are any rules. I think if somebody is turned on by something that they see and they want to own it, then they should buy it because they have that passion for it, not because they're thinking about whether this is going to make some money in the future or could be resold. You should buy art because you want to live with it and you want to love it.
And what if you can't afford it? You can still enjoy it.
You can always go out to galleries. This is the wonderful thing about First Thursday. You can go out and you can see art, you can experience it. It's like having your own collection, and you get to change it every month and see it through new eyes.
Thanks, Carrie.
Thank you.
I tend to look for something that's beautiful and technically well done and meaningful. That speaks to me about beauty and the universe.
What do you want to do with your art? What do you want to express, or what do you hope people will get from seeing your art?
Well, I'm hoping for one thing that they will understand the kind of effort and hours that go into it. To me, these kaleidoscope images are kind of a metaphor for the universe, because everything is spinning and radiating all the time. It's a universal image. It's like a mandala.
Well, thank you. Anything else you'd like to say about art? What do you think of this piece?
This is called Angels or Demons. Angels or Demons, because depending on how you're looking at it, you can, depending on how you're looking at it, you can either see angels here,
I'm sorry, what did you say?
demons there.
Say it again?
You can see angels here or demons there, depending on how you want to look at it. There's a demon face here and winged angels on the other side.
So when you look at art, one thing is you can look at it different ways, like you were doing just then. Anything else you'd like to say about art appreciation?
was one of the most difficult paintings I ever did. Are you interested in that? Because each color has to have two colors. You have to have the red, which you're using, and then a shadow color for the red. And the same is true for all the other colors. And you have to put it in exactly in the right spot on all four quadrants at the same time. Well, you have the color mixed so that you can match it all over. You can't lose your place.
I am Pamela Enticknap, and this current body of work is in polymer clay, and they are characters that I see in the world that I live in, and I interpret them, and I just enjoy seeing human activity and what people will do. And so I make these characters. They're made out of polymer clay and acrylic.
What would you say makes, when people look at a work of art, what do you think they should look for, or what do you look for?
Oh, I'm trying to give my viewers a little bit of a clue of what I see in the world. So I'm showing you my world through my eyes, and I hope you find a lot of humor in it, because there's a great deal of humor in these pieces.
What would you say makes art art, as opposed to a scribble or anything else?
I think anything that a human being reacts to. I think art is all about being a human being. I mean, the animals don't seem to be too interested in art, but human beings are, because it touches their senses, it reminds them of something, it brings out feelings and emotions in these people, and that's exactly what art is supposed to do. It's a language. It's a language. It's a visual language.
Right. When you look at some other piece of art, two-dimensional art, for example, is there any strategy you have looking at a piece? Do you want to be emotionally struck, graphically? Is it a combination of things? How do you evaluate a piece?
You can walk into a gallery, and all of a sudden you'll see one or two pieces that really strike you as being something you're interested in. And that artist has managed to attach himself or herself to you a little bit. And that's really what you're looking for when you go into a gallery. Just see what feels right to you. And art is a very big word. It can encompass an enormous amount of things, including a Picasso scribble.
Thank you. Anything else you'd like to say about art appreciation?
Well, art is, it comes from the heart of all artists. Their work is from their heart, and it's honest, and it's out there, and you can tell when you see an artist's work if it's honest and it's true, and that's what you really should be looking for, that honesty.
My name is Joan Rosenberg Dent, and I work in porcelain, and the kind of porcelain that I'm using is from New Zealand. It's a bone china clay, and I love it because of the whiteness. I love white, and the piece is about torn edges, raw edges. It's very raw. I took the porcelain and I stripped it. I pulled it and tore it, and the edges were so incredible that I couldn't change it in any way, shape, or form. I just twisted it a little bit, and I didn't know what I was going to do with my pieces until they were fired, and then the fun was the discovery of what it was going to be. But I worked face down doing it, and I did not see the shadows. And once it got on the wall and the shadows became part of the piece, it became dynamic for me.
Very nice. And what would you say makes art art, as opposed to a scribble or anything?
For me, art is all about having a concept or an idea and expressing it visually. It's a way to visually express an idea. So when I think about raw edges, I think about the raw edges of people, of situations. It's not just about the porcelain physically being raw. It's about raw edges. in life, and we all face those.
Well, thank you. Anything else you would like to say about art appreciation?
Well, I do it because I love to make things, and I love to express things and ideas that might give somebody a cause to think about it and ponder about it and give them maybe a little happiness, more happiness, bring
It's a way of giving.
Yes, it is. It's a way of sharing. And I have one other piece over here that is very different.
Stand right here. A little closer, yeah. Tell me about it.
So this piece is called haiku. It's very different from raw edges. All the pieces are very smooth. I rolled it on a canvas with no texture at all. I wanted the smoothness and the curvature to be very prominent in the piece. I call it haiku because haiku is a form of poetry that has a shape, and this piece has a shape, and it has a language that I don't understand, and I don't understand Japanese. So to me, when I did this piece, I did not know what I was doing. I do hundreds of cards, and then I start laying them out and playing, and the discovery is what keeps me alive.
I'm R.T. Livingston, and I am a conceptual multimedia artist. I began my career in college as a painter, but since then I've done many different things, installation, performance, I've written a couple of rock operas, I've done a lot. But this particular series is called the CIC. I moved to California my nose is itching from wearing a mask. I moved here in 2006. I was brought here earlier in 2003 by the Santa Barbara Commission for the Arts, and I kept coming back. And by 2009, when I was firmly established here, I really started focusing on the ocean. I'm an environmentalist, and so water and air, clean air, are very important to me. So this series is called the CIC. I use a code. I use letters, this V, and then C, capital C, small I, capital C, which translates to what I'm looking at, the CIC. And in this particular case, what I'm doing here is I'm constantly aware of the changes in the ocean, and also the fact that the Earth, as represented here, is 3/4 water. And my interest is really in clean air, clean water, because without them we can't survive. But I get lost in the painting process of painting the ocean because in this really wacko world we're living in, it brings a sense of calm.
What would you say makes art art, as opposed to a scribble or anything else?
I think it has to do with the artist's intention. If the artist says it's art, whether you like it or not, it's art. It's not a value judgment here. Then there are those who say whether it's good or bad, but that again is also a matter of taste. But I believe it's really the intention of the artist.
When you look at a piece of art, do you evaluate it in any particular way? Do you let yourself be emotionally affected, or are you looking at it graphically, or do you have any strategy when you look at art?
Well, I'm also an art historian, so I have a huge background in terms of aesthetics. Aesthetics, actually, is a form of philosophy. I know this gets off the track, but I think in essence, artists are visual philosophers. How do I judge a piece?
Well, that was good. Artists are visual philosophers. What did you say?
I said artists. I believe artists are visual philosophers. It's a point of view that we present. Every artist has their own point of view. You and I have different points of view. You're pointing a camera at me, I'm looking at you. Our realities are different right now. It's the same for artists. But in terms of judging, when a work hits me, when it hits my gut, and there's just a vibration, then I relate to it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that other work that doesn't do that doesn't have value. Those are the works that I look at in terms of composition, inspiration, originality, all of those things that we look at, form, blah, blah, blah.
Well, thank you. And your name again is?
R.T. Livingston.
I'm Marlene Struess. I'm a part of Western Edge, the new group here in Santa Barbara. This is my painting, Glowing Grain of Sand.
Wow, glowing grain of sand. It's crazy.
Obviously, it looks quite figurative, and that was done on purpose, but it can also be shown horizontally as a grain of sand. There's a wire on the back. If you have a couch that goes that way, that's just fine. But either way, it looks very much like a figure. And the idea here is that each human body, each soul on earth is really just a little grain of sand in the universe. But it's very beautiful and it's very important. It's very lovely. And each one is a gem.
Nice.
My name is Ruth Ellen Hogue, and my work is figurative. Almost all my work has to do with people and figures. So,
What do you hope people get out of seeing that, or what might they get out of it?
I think most of my work is on the happy side, or at least not troubled. And with a lot of the political things going on in our country, a lot of artists are drawn to that. I'm not drawn to that. I tend to go for the happier side of life, which sounds a little sweet, and it's not intentional in that way. But it's people in everyday life, things we encounter. What do we think about as people? What do we ponder? We think about our everyday life for the most part, and so my work is really about everyday life.
What would you say makes art?
If it's compelling for you to want to look at it more than 15 seconds. If, as an artist, if you can keep an audience for 30 seconds or a minute looking at your work, that's a successful piece of work.
Well put. Okay, what would you say makes art?
I think art is something that causes a visceral reaction. It can be emotional, it can be historical, it can come from a lot of different ways. But I think unless there is some reaction to it, I often think of art as a conversation between the artist and the viewer. And I think the art that's the most successful is art that leaves room for the viewer's interpretation of it all. So there's the message that the artist is sending, but there's also the message that the viewer is receiving. And that's where the magic happens.
Well put. And when you look at a piece of art, do you have any strategy, like what you look at or look for or anything?
Well, what I think is most important is to look and to look and to look and to keep looking. Sometimes I say to people who come into my gallery, don't be too quick to buy, especially when you're first starting out, because not only is your taste still developing, but you're building a base of knowledge from which you can respond. And so it's very easy for people to say, oh, I like that, I don't like that. Based on what? You need to look and look and look again. And ideally, look at the good stuff. I tell people, go to museums, go to auction houses, look at really good art, train your eye, and then you'll know what you're looking at.
Anything else you'd like to say about art appreciation?
Well, an artist that I worked with was in his 90s by the end of his career. He always said, art is one thing and words are another. So sometimes it's not possible to put into words what it is that you really are getting from a piece of art, or what it is that an artist is giving. This is Theophilus Brown, who is one of the Bay Area figurative painters, and sometimes people would say to him, well, what's it about? And he would usually say, who knows?
Very nice. And your name is?
Thomas Reynolds.
And your gallery and address?
This is the Thomas Reynolds Gallery, and now I'm at 1331 State Street, just by the Arlington Theater, after 25 years in San Francisco.
Thank you.